Welcome to EHO Knows, the podcast for environmental health officers. I'm Shane, and in today's episode, I'm going to be doing something slightly different. So I'm going to be interviewing Lydia Buchtmann, who is really the driving force behind the Food Safety Information Council. And I'm a great believer. We fully back the work she's doing and sponsor it. And in this episode, what I want to do is to cover what the council does, but why you as an environmental health officer should get involved in it. It's a fantastic cause, and I believe that everyone should be giving it 100% support. But then in the second half, I want to just look at Lydia's story, and it really is an amazing story of how an individual can go well and truly beyond the call of duty and make such a huge difference. So as we look at what the council does, just keep in mind that funding pretty much dried up years ago, but it's been Lydia's driving force that's kept it going and having the impact that it is there. So today's episode, it's about Lydia, it's about why you should get involved, and it's just encouragement for everyone to know that the extra work that you do really, really matters. So welcome, Lydia.
Yes, thanks, Shane.
So everyone's probably seen the work that you've done without necessarily knowing that it's the work that you've done. So tell us a little bit about the Food Safety Information Council, what it is and what you're trying to achieve.
Yes, so look, we've been going almost 30 years now. It was back in 1997. And firstly, I took this on as my role at FSANZ. I was head of communication and stakeholder engagement there at Food Standards Australia and New Zealand. And they said, there's this new organisation, go along and find out a little bit more. But essentially, we were set up by all our members, all the states and territories and various professional groups, got together and felt as the new Food Standards Code came in, sort of in the 90s, what would happen to that gap between point of sale when consumers go to the supermarket or to a takeaway and get the food and take it home, and how are they handling the food? They stick the food in the back of a hot car. Food poisoning rates weren't going to go down. So the idea then was to pull together a whole group of people who are interested in food safety, government and non-government, to set up this organisation as the Food Safety Information Council to educate consumers in what they do.
So last week I heard a really good talk, and I'm hoping it's going to become a future episode, on sushi. And it was just that story about how you've got sushi that's for sale, you've got the 2-hour, 4-hour rule, and they sell it to the general public. And then the general public will buy it and then wander off to the beach and leave it sitting there for goodness knows how long and eat it, or might take it home and drop it into the kiddies' school bag for the following day. So you're really picking up that gap of, fantastic, we've got the 2-hour, 4-hour rules and all that sort of stuff. But the moment the food leaves, it's then just at the mercy of the general public. So it really is the food standards on overdrive. So 30 years ago. So what did it look like 30 years ago?
Yeah, look, we were set up, the original thought, the supermarkets were involved. Back in the days, they actually were talking to each other. I don't think that will happen these days. But they were enthusiastic, certainly New South Wales Food Authority, as it was back then with another name. They were very keen to get going, and slowly all the states and territories joined on. I was at Food Standards, so, I was chucked in the deep end there. And a lot of the work, of course, is translating that 2-hour, 4-hour rule into what the average consumer, busy consumer, will understand, that wants to take that sushi home, wants to take it to the beach, stick it in their kids' lunchbox, about the risks that are there and the benefits as well. Just getting it in simple, easy terms for consumers to understand. A big gig each year, of course, is Food Safety Week, which has been set in November. We set it then because the weather warms up, all those risks come together. We start entertaining more, going out to barbecues. We then rock into Christmas, which is a real recipe for disaster. You've got the whole family come, and may I say alcohol may be involved, and, food safety is not top of people's minds. So you've got hot weather, which increases. You've got, people not paying attention. And food poisoning rates obviously do get up as the weather gets warmer. So we run a campaign over the summer. And these days we actually run TV and radio ads, and that's a really big advantage that we have. Slowly we morphed away from that more membership organisation. And I have to say Environmental Health Australia have been long-term members with us, as have a number of local councils as well, supportive of our work. And as we've grown, our work's become more complex, of course, and we do more than Food Safety Week. We do campaigns throughout the year, and we do reactive media. We get people ringing up about, certainly the cyclones were huge recently, natural disasters, and getting advice out to people for that. So we morphed a little bit over the years too. At one stage we decided we needed to be more than just a membership organisation, and we became a charity. This happened when we lost government funding. Up until about 5 years ago, we had federal government funding as a health promotion charity, and suddenly, of course, the government removed that when they were cutting back on money, which is not a very sensible thing to do if there's a huge number of food poisoning cases, a big cost to the community. So since then, we have been a charity, so we can take charitable donations.
Yes, and it's ironic that, just as we're trying to focus on health, the very first thing we do is pull funding on public education for health. So every year, every environmental health officer knows we have, around about 4.5 million cases of food poisoning. And so it's one thing to be focusing on, food safety in restaurants and cafes. But like you said, you're completing the picture and trying to do that holistic one. So over the years, what have been the topics that you've actually covered? It's not just been temperature. What are the topics?
And certainly we're evidence-based, so that's scientific evidence-based, but also consumer attitude evidence-based. As a social scientist, and I'm not a science scientist, I'm a social scientist and a communicator, we check what consumers know about the risks of food poisoning. Hand washing is a really long-term one we've been doing, and we've slowly seen improvements in hand washing. Of course, when COVID came along, we thought our work was done and everyone would be washing their hands, but nope, it did go up a little bit and then it's come down again. We find with our consumer research it's pretty consistent. Young people are pretty rubbish. As they get into their 30s, perhaps, people's knowledge and behaviour for food safety is a whole lot better. We think because they have kids by then and have to be a bit more responsible about hand washing and other food safety things. And our messaging, and older Australians are much more knowledgeable. I have to say, of course, that blokes are worse at food safety behaviour than other thoughts. While we're educating consumers, of course, food handlers and people working in the food industry don't come from outer space. They come from the general community. So if people have got a better knowledge of food safety behaviour, once they move into handling food professionally, they have a better knowledge. I make the analogy, it's a bit like wanting to be an Uber driver, but you don't even have a driver's license. People wander into, young people particularly as food handlers, they often do a job while they're going through uni, and they need to have a better knowledge of food safety. So slowly knowledge is going up. Recently we did some more work on understanding the food safety stuff on food labels used by best before dates and handling and cooking instructions. And we found there'd been quite an improvement in that over 10 or 12 years since we last did it. So health promotion education is always slow. If you look at smoking, it took about 30 years, but slowly, people's behaviour is getting better as we go along, which we're quite proud of.
So food for thought. If we educated the general public on food safety, then the food handler course would just be redundant. But instead, we've got this big gap in just public awareness. And so we then have to make sure that, especially blokes coming into the hospitality industry, need to be taught the basics of, wash your hands before you handle food, and what temperatures can food be kept at, or how long you can keep it, or whatever. So this is knowledge that everyone should just basically have, but because we don't have it, we have the food handler course. And so what you're really doing is saying, hey, if we can educate everyone, then that will naturally flow into hospitality in the first place, because now these are just background innate skills rather than having to change people's behaviour and educate them when they're on the job. Now, there, for an environmental health officer, there's one awesome reason why you should be backing the council, because, if we can be educating children and people just day in, day out, it makes your job so much easier when you're stepping into a restaurant and then saying, hey, are you washing your hands? Or what are you doing with the storage of food in the fridge or whatever? So there's plug number one. This year, the topic is...
Well, good question. And just on your last point, there was a nice peak in younger people, under 25s in our research last year, that showed generally their knowledge had greatly improved, and we couldn't think of any sudden reason for that. But we think perhaps the food supervisor requirements in the code have now kicked in, and perhaps they've been doing more training courses, so that was good. So it's interesting to see how you track these things.
And we have when the next flow on was, because we're now making food handling and food safety supervising compulsory in the hospitality industry, and we know that so many youth are involved in the industry, then there's a good chance that then flows into them as adults and then raising a family. And I've got a beautiful story of someone working in Angola, and it was exactly that story of men working in the industry and going home and teaching their wives, and they actually had a noticeable impact on the general health. So it's a loop. If we can educate them young, it's easier in the workforce, and if we educate them in the workforce, it flows back into the home environment. Yeah.
And we're particularly proud of that too. Out of the things we do during the course of the year, obviously, around now we're doing fishing and people going away for Easter. We're covering the risks of parasites too, not just foodborne disease. We've got a particularly good parasitologist, and a big plug, of course, to our scientific team, who are highly well qualified if you look on our website, and they give up their time too to go through and make sure our stuff is accurate and interesting. And then my team, of course, make sure it's then in English and people can understand it. All right. And we translate things. We've got material in other languages, which is useful, because I understand a lot of food handlers too are also from non-English speaking backgrounds. So it's good to make sure that people completely understand what they need to know.
It begs the question, why did the government just drop the ball on this? Surely having, multilingual educational resources is absolutely essential. But, having just come from a New South Wales Food Authority event last week, they do an awesome job. But what it seems like is, we're now just pushing it down further and further, which just means that everyone has to reinvent the wheel. Can I ask the nasty question? Why did they drop it? Was it just politics, or?
Really good question. It was Tony Abbott when he was health minister, and they said they didn't have enough money.
I'm just there, bang. But
but it was, in the scheme of things, for a health promotion charity, we think we're the only health promotion charity that doesn't get some form of funding. We get great sponsorship from people like your excellent organisation, and that come in will sponsor campaigns. But there's boring stuff. We have to pay insurance and the phone, and and all sorts of things, many apps to do stuff, and we need funding for that general admin. We also have no paid staff, which is really insane. I appreciate all our team who gives their time up, because it's a big investment into what we do. And, I'm happy to do what I can, but none of us, we're all getting a little bit older. Eventually, we may have to stop doing this if we don't get funding. We've been to see Kearney, the Assistant Minister for Health, and her staff about restoring our funding, because there's an election on at the moment. We try that each election time. And everyone loves our work, but we've got to make sure that someone actually pays for it, and it'd be really important to make sure that we at least get one paid staff member to make sure we can keep going.
Yeah. So one way that environmental health officers can contribute is become a member. Last week we were at the booth promoting it, and then going, oh, how much is membership? I've got no idea. How much is membership? Environmental health officer.
In fact, I can offer you a special offer at the moment. So, yeah, $200 a year, absolutely nothing plus GST is membership, particularly for EHOs. That's a lot cheaper than we have generally for our membership because we recognise the good work that EHOs do and how it's nice to be linked in. And EHOs can also do important things like, just go to our website, foodsafety.asn.au, and sign up for the newsletter so you know what's going on, what we're getting out there, how we work with emergencies to help them. And the emergency stuff is really important because people are having floodwaters wash over their veggie patch. They don't know how to, what if their cans of food have got dirty, how to take the labels off and write what was in that can so they don't have the surprise dinner in a few weeks' time, and, to put them through bleach, or all these important things, how to talk to the local council, make sure how you dispose of, all the rotten food you may have in your freezer. And even little things like, perhaps your insurance, or, there might be local funding to actually give you some emergency relief so you can replace the food you've lost in that freezer. So we get this out to consumers in an easy, simple way without having to ring up local councils and find out what happens.
And to be clear, this is professional information. So it's not just someone throwing it all together. You've got your scientists, you've got your experts in the field who are contributing. And so also from that point of view, for an environmental health officer, it's an awesome source for resources, but also I'm sure if they had great resources, talk to you, and it's a great platform for sharing knowledge. And like you said, it's a great place for the public to be coming in so that they're not then picking up the phone to ring the council to say, hey, what am I meant to do now? $200, $220, it's peanuts for what you get. But we do know that times are tough and everyone's short. And the awesome thing is this information's free. So even if they're not a member, this information is largely available, but it would be awesome if you did then, officially support. So there's a brief plug on what the council does. It's a brief plug on the achievements and what an EHO can get out of it, and what they can also contribute to it. From your story's point of view, you said if originally it was a paid position, it was your job, and everything was sweet. You were doing, being paid to be making a difference in people's lives, and then the money started to disappear. So what was going through your mind as, was it, do I walk away from this, or, you're still here, but there must have been a crunch point at which you're going, hey, wait a minute, this is my job and it's being ripped out from underneath.
And I do stress that Fazanza had a heap load of other things to do, international relations, so all sorts of stakeholder arrangements. And I was their media spokesperson. And we did have a paid executive officer who did all the main management for the organisation, and that's what we lost then at the time. So it was a decision our board made. We decided, will we try and rock on without any paid people? And it was hard. We divided the tasks between us, and everyone was great. Made ourselves a charity, made the income a little bit more easier, but certainly you can't pay a person on charitable donations. It's not a secure enough source of income. So we decided as a group to keep going and see how we're going. And sort of 10 years later, we are still going without that funding, but it's starting to run down. The little bit of savings we had is now running down. Cost of living is hitting people. They're still committed to what we do, but they're withdrawing from paying their membership and so forth. So hopefully we can get something out of whatever the incoming government is, and it will help to see if we can keep going. But people are still very committed, and we still enjoy what we do, I have to admit. I've given up some consultancy, some paid work to keep doing this. But look, it's interesting, and it's much more fun than some of the consultancy work I've done as a science communicator. So this is good. Look, we think we will keep rocking on as long as we can, but it is important, and really, if we can get that federal funding back again, that will make a big difference.
Yes. So from your point of view, the financial crunch, was it a hard decision, or was it just something that just gradually increased?
Look, people are very committed to this. Our board, all of our committees, our scientific and our communications committee, and we've got a risk committee that looks at the risks that we're going through. But hopefully we can keep rocking on for as long as we can. But it would be nice to have that financial security of having at least one paid person to make sure everything goes. And perhaps I can have the odd holiday occasionally without.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is actually amazing how much volunteer work is within the industry. Over the last couple episodes, I've interviewed a couple of the staff, or sorry, the committee members from EHA, and that's largely their own amount of time that's been given. But then I know the members, some of the experts that you're getting in from all over the place, and it's largely extra work beyond their day job, and so it's absolutely amazing. And so from my point of view, I've got the easy job. I just have to hand over a bit of a paycheck and just say, hey, here's a little bit of sponsorship. But it is absolutely amazing how many people you've got volunteering their time and their resources. And what you fail to answer in this question is about the burden, and you're just going, no, it just magically happens. And so it's partially this podcast is an awesome time to say, hey, thanks a lot for the work that you're doing, and it does make a difference. And it's partially a great time to just acknowledge for a lot of environmental health officers, when you go above and beyond, sometimes it feels like a bit of a thankless task. Sometimes you're there going, hey, wait a minute, this is so important, why isn't it being paid for? But it makes a difference. And so you're on national TV, you're in the papers, you've got coverage telling people every day how to look after food, and you're saving lives, but you will never know who that person was because they never got sick and they never went to hospital and their child never died. So yeah, once again, it's that when stuff doesn't happen that you're successful. So
Look, we did talk to them. There was a lovely lady who was very worried right through her pregnancies about listeria, and we went through all the foods, and almost every night she'd ring up and say, I'm having this for dinner, is this okay? And slowly, she got better. And but we watched that child grow up, and now we're helping her with stuff in her lunchbox, to take the kid to take to school. So, you do have contact with people, but at the same time, over 1,000 people use our website every day, and that is so much better than them ringing
wow.
us up. We like talking to them, or ringing your local EHO. So that's pretty important. And we reach millions with our TV and radio advertising, which we do so cheaply. It costs millions and millions of dollars to pay for an advertising campaign on TV and radio, but as a charity we get the placement and distribution for free. So that's a big difference. So for under $20,000 we can run a national TV campaign, and that includes to Indigenous people. We go out through National Indigenous Radio Service, and they also run our ads, and we get an Indigenous First Nations person to design that campaign and put it out there. So that's really important. I'm very proud that we actually do that and make sure. And let's face it, traditional First Nations food safety is pretty good, probably much better than us white fellas do. So it's great to at least do that as well.
Yes. Okay, so just in case you missed the maths, $220 to be a member, $20,000 for you to put a campaign in to effectively get $2 million worth of advertising. So 100 EHOs getting together and joining is enough to do the campaign, which is enough to do a nationwide $2 million advertising campaign. So, if you really want to leverage your time, your money, just another plug. Okay. Now, any advice to environmental health officers as we close up?
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of EHOs in the whole food regulation process, which I've been, from beginning to end, and right back to the development of the Food Standards Code back in the 90s. They do a great job. being in the front line and making sure that food supply is really good. And I know they work really hard under and stretched too. And Environmental Health Australia is a member, and you may have seen me doing a number of podcasts and things like for World Food Safety Day and so forth. So we work very closely together, and we appreciate that relationship too. So. And Samantha from there is also on my communication committee, so we use her time as well. So, yeah, we certainly appreciate the link with EHOs, and there are quite a few number of local councils who are members, which is great.
So at the EHA National Conference, which will probably be over by the time this podcast is released, I'm talking about how to communicate food safety. But that's always been the challenge with the general public is how do you engage the general public with talking about food safety? And you've been doing it now for 30 years. What are the challenges with talking about food safety? And then, yeah, what are the tips for overcoming those challenges and getting the message out there?
Yeah, it's good to move it down to the personal level. I mean, obviously, there's the great study that Fazan's done with ANU that does how many millions of cases there are and how many trillions it costs the economy. But, for people's heads, that's really an awful lot. But if you put it simply, that research, like most Western countries, and perhaps the US is going to go downhill a bit more on this soon, not relying on science, but basically you have about a 1 in 5 chance of getting food poisoning each year, or turn it around the other way, once every 5 years, which makes it sound a bit less scary than that, but it's still a lot, and it's a big strain on our health system that is so unnecessary. And it's not rocket science. We're not talking about, we don't have to cure cancer. It's stuff that goes back to Florence Nightingale. It's wash your hands. It's, cook your food properly. It's very simple messages that we turn over. And even things like the 2-hour, 4-hour rule are fine for the food industry. But for the average person cooking at home, that's really quite a complicated thing to get your head around. So little things are key messages. Get your fridge running at 5 degrees or under, get a fridge thermometer to check that. Cook your food properly, read the instructions on the packet. Make sure high-risk foods, like sausages and minced products and chicken are cooked to 75 degrees Celsius. Very simple messages like that we get out there. And each year we get...
Sorry, even just getting the message out as to what is a high-risk food and getting into the general population that rice is a high-risk food. You can't just leave it on the bench top overnight and then turn it into a rice salad the next day. So
that's our Christmas message. It's if your fridge is full at Christmas and you're entertaining, take the alcohol out of the fridge and keep the rice and the salad inside.
Yes.
Always goes down. But we get those over. We do a lot of radio, we do a lot of TV, we do a lot of interviews out there, and we make it fun as well. We don't make it totally dry and scientific all the time, and that's why the media comes back to us.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing is, we talk about food poisoning. You've got a 1 in 5 chance of getting food poisoning each year, or once every 5 years. But the truth is, well, actually, you've got 1 in 5 chance of spending the night driving the porcelain bus. You've got a 1 in 5 chance of having something rip through your guts where you will just absolutely hate yourself. And so, we just move it from the sterile, you've got a 1 in 5 chance of getting food poisoning, to, mate, this is bad, and it's bad if you get it, and it's even worse if an elderly person gets it or a child gets it or whatever. And so, it's about moving it from stats to, it's about you and the really bad stuff. So mushrooms are on the agenda for this year. Why mushrooms?
Oh, look, every year, before it became fashionable and people were more interested in death cap mushrooms, and I think the trial of the bad lady, the allegedly bad lady, might be coming up soon. That
Everyone's
was
dying for a good mushroom dish.
Yeah, good slogan. But we've worked with the Poisons Information Centre, and we partnership with a lot of people for probably about 5 years now to get that message out about, don't pick or eat wild mushrooms, because it's so dangerous. And it's getting worse at the moment because there are huge social media groups for people who are out picking mushrooms, where they're, saying they can identify them for you, but of course they can't. None of them are qualified, and we work with, experts in the field, and they can't tell the difference between an edible mushroom or not. So, we keep the message there simple: just don't pick or eat, don't take the risk, support your local mushroom growers.
Yeah.
It's not that expensive and a whole lot safer. So.
And we've got changing groups, different ethnic groups coming in and saying, "Hey, here's something that we have." And then last week at the conference was, the hallucinogens and being added into products and sold over the counter. And they're banned, but even the retailers don't even know that these are illegal substances, and they're just going, "Well, we were sold it; it must have been legal." So it's
Yes, and there we were talking about mushroom gummies last year, which I don't think I ever thought that would happen in my career. But yes, so obviously imported illegally, sold as a food, so the recall was pretty quickly. But we're there. Same with the spinach and steak at the moment. No one's got ill from it. Commercial salads have been tested, and steak has been found, which is very dangerous. But we're there to, we've done interviews on that saying, we can't comment in depth on this, but certainly it's a good thing that, this product has been recalled as a safety requirement, because it's a very dangerous issue, and it shows how well our recall system works, that it does happen. So we're there to reassure as well.
So another tip on how to communicate is just wait until it's a hot topic. And I know from a media's point of view, this is happening now, and if you can turn around and say, yes, we're prepared to make a statement on it. And so that's what the council's really, really good at, is saying, yes, we've, loose leaves or food poisoning outbreaks or whatever, and stepping in. And it's not a condemnation, it's a education. So fantastic. Someone has to be sick or die for the media to pay attention to it. But that's the point at which you can then step in and say, hey, here's the educational piece. And then it's the point at which you can nudge politicians to say, hey, change the law, give more resources or whatever. But it takes the bad thing, but it also takes someone being there ready to immediately pounce on that opportunity.
And look, we don't do that without consulting with our members about this, just to make sure we're not giving mixed messages out there too. So, we just check what we can or can't say about things. But it's a good way of getting things out there, that we're a trusted area, and we do check with the actual experts at Fazan's or whoever's doing a recall about what's happening,
So you've still got good relations with them?
Oh yes, we all get on well, and and sometimes they can give us some money, and sometimes they can't, and we appreciate that. We know that budgets come and go, but I'm also reasonably good at the end of the financial year of popping around and seeing if anyone's got something not spent. But the key thing is trying to get that paid person back. That would be brilliant if we could.
So you obviously need support, council to council, state to state, and you're communicating with them. Which one's the best state to deal with? And you know what the second question is going to be. So which state's the best one to deal with?
Oh look, they're all good. They're all different, and even wearing my hat when I work for Fazan's, they are all different. And we had New Zealand thrown into the mix there too. So it's they're all good within their resources. I mean, you've got big states like New South Wales, you've got big states like Victoria, who is, less inclined to get involved, but we have been chatting to their minister, particularly with the death cap mushrooms, and another death recently where the coroner told them to run a TV and radio advertising, and we said, we can help you with that, but they said, oh no, it's fine, we'll just put it on the website, they'll find it, won't be translated, but so they're all good. They're all lovely. Some and sometimes it's the smaller ones that really help out. Northern Territory Health and sometimes WA Health pay for our Indigenous campaign, which is lovely. We get specific input from other states. South Australia is absolutely brilliant on a number of things, particularly in getting our consumer research. And Fazan's, is on committees, both scientifically and the communication one. So, we keep all those links going, and it's really important. So, so they are great. and really help out. Yeah.
So, which one's the worst state?
Look, we have seriously been talking to Victoria to get them back in a little bit involved. Look, they were a founding member, and they have been lovely. I mean, I had a nice chat with them this week about death cap mushrooms and how we can help out and how it's important they get involved. And they were giving us some nice solutions. It's a little bit harder because they don't have, not like the New South Wales Food Authority. They're a bit scattered amongst different departments for their food safety. But no, I was pleased to chat with them, and they were very helpful and friendly this week. So let's hope we see some results in that.
And so how much of it is just like the Victorian culture of saying at the state level they're independent, and you've got all the politics about, oh no, we're not going to adopt their standards as we go national, we want to do it our own way. What's your pet theory as to why does Victoria want to do it on its own?
Yeah, my theory's always been the division, of course, as I mentioned, is hard. They don't have that nice centralised, food authority there. It's divided between another different departments. And you've got Prime Safe and you've got Dairy Food Safety Victoria, both of whom have been members at some stage or other. But yeah, it's just interesting. The structure's a bit different. Yeah, it is the state with the most agriculture, the most food production. It's very involved in that, but it's just slightly different. That's all. But that's more wearing my old Fazan's hat more than in his current role there. But
Yeah.
people and its personalities. Sometimes you have people who are very committed to our food safety work, and sometimes they move on and do something else, and you get someone else who's less committed. So it's
The joys of politics. And yes, you're the person who's in this role now. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And you did mention, of course, that, working for charities, why do people work for free? Now, all of us do in my organisation. They're great and they're committed and put a lot of time in, and they've all got day jobs. So I'm kind of retired, apart from working 40 hours a week for the Food Safety Information Council. But certainly hanging around with a lot of charity CEOs, and we do have regular meetings, and people are really committed to that. And I'm lucky I've got a retirement income I can live off of. But there's been research that shows that if you donate your time to a charity, you live longer. I'm not sure if that's true scientifically or whether it just feels like you live longer. But it's a good thing to do. It's interesting. We've all got skills. We've got university educations we want to use and skills. So it's nice to still keep working together. And they're a group of people I've worked together with for a long time. We're not quite at our 30 years yet. We've got a couple more years to go, but hopefully we will rock on to then and continue to be successful.
Yes. So if you're part of the mass exodus of the senior EHOs, then it's a great way of continuing to use your skills and actually have a much wider impact. And if you're just starting off your career, here's a golden opportunity to really see how you can really leverage your time and your efforts and make a much bigger splash. And so it really doesn't matter what age or stage, join. We'll just have a subliminal message all the way through, and in the comments I'll be dropping links as to where people can go to join. And we hope that numbers suddenly just triple over the magic of one podcast. But seriously, do consider joining. Lydia, thank you very, very much for your time today. Thank you very much for your time and effort for the last 30 years. And all the best. And we hope this election, government will turn around and go, we've been idiots and here's a stack of money. So thanks a lot, Lydia.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. And thanks for your support too. You've been a long-time member and we appreciate that.
I should mention, share the podcast, drop comments. If you are a member, put comments in. And likewise, just share this with other people and just encourage them to join. Thanks a lot. See you all later.